Welcome to Increase the Speed with Which You Succeed as a Speaker. In case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Patricia Fripp, Hall of Fame keynote speaker, executive speech coach, sales presentation skills trainer, and online training expert. You will be asked different polls. One is on the right. We want to identify who is live. Do you consider yourself a business professional interested in improving your speaking? Or are you a professional speaker or somebody who has aspirations to be? Although this is focused more on the business of speaking and presentation skills, the advice we 100% guarantee will be pertinent to you, whatever category you're in. I am collaborating with one of my very good friends, Lois Book More Business Creamer, your colleagues in the National Speakers Association. And as we have delivered webinars and teleseminars before, if this were a match, it would be a, what do you call a rematch? If we were fighting, it would be a rematch, except we are fighting to improve the business and the quality of all speakers. So Lois, we are back by popular demand. Welcome our guests.
Totally popular demand. Fripp and Creamer. I'd like to welcome everyone here. And, Patricia and I did a webinar a little earlier, and we got such an incredible response that we wanted to come back. So we're kind of, as an homage to Robert Fripp, I'm saying we're bringing the band back together for another gig. And I'm really looking forward to it. You're going to get a lot of good strategic advice that you can apply, and I am really looking forward to our time together.
And you are famous for helping speakers and entrepreneurs come up with their
positioning statement. And if you remember, that's what we discussed in our last webinar, Patricia. And just as a quick reminder, I'll give you my positioning statement, which is I work with professional speakers who want to book more business, make more money, and fully monetize their intellectual property.
And isn't that great? That is probably one of the best positioning statements I've ever heard, which it should be. It's your business.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, a third member of the band is, of course, Paul. Paul is the Director of Client Experience for Fripp Virtual Training, which is my online presentation skills training. He is the moderator of all our virtual events, and he will tell you how to engage with us. You're very smart individuals because you've already answered the first poll. Take it away, Paul.
Hello, everyone. As a lot of you have seen, there is a chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. Within that chat, you can communicate with each other and us and ask your short, specific questions throughout the call. We'll answer those live, so just make sure to keep them short and specific and ask them sooner rather than later so we have plenty of time to address them. As you found as well, there is a polling question area. When you click your answer, just click vote, and then we'll discuss the results of the poll on the call. And for this first poll, are you a business professional or a professional speaker or aspiring to be? 23% are business, or 22% are business professionals, and approximately 75% are professional speakers or aspire to be.
Good, Paul. And would you bring up the second poll now? And whenever you think it's appropriate, you can bring up the third one. So the second one is whether you're business or a professional speaker, how do you self-identify? As a presenter, and I would even include as a marketer, would you consider yourself novice, intermediate, or advanced? And while you answer that, Lois, you will focus on some of the mistakes that speakers make. What is the first mistake that could be costly that speakers make that you help them with?
Well, coming out of the gate in speaking, your speaking skills are what get you on the platform, and your speaking skills are what will bring you back to the platform. You can have the best information in the world, but if you don't have great skill when presenting, you're never going to get an opportunity to do it. So that's what I would say, that is it.
Okay, good. And of course, that's more my area of expertise than yours.
Yeah.
So I'll certainly give them some advice. But as you know, Lois, good marketing, you can help people with great marketing. You can make sure your website is fabulous. And it's amazing. Almost anyone can find a 3-minute video clip.
That's right.
Your profile can be great. It might bring you one business, one booking, one client. However, to have a successful business, you need repeat business and referrals.
Yes. And Patricia, as you know, my work, as I see it, is to help speakers build a long-term success, a speaking business that thrives, an intellectual property business that really thrives. And you've just got to have the skills to carry it through. And, if I may, presentation skills are not something that you learn one time. These need, if you want to go up in scale for what you can ask, your skills have to be commensurate with your ability to communicate.
And that's true. And Paul, will you please tell us, those who are at least live, we know many people will watch a replay, and we welcome you watching us replay, but of the individuals who tuned in, what are the percentages?
We have 23% consider themselves a novice, 21% consider themselves an advanced speaker, and then the majority, 55%, consider themselves intermediate.
Good. Well, we absolutely promise our advice will help everyone. So let's look at, how do you start improving your presentation skills wherever you are? And it never ceases to amaze me that many individuals who come to me to help improve their presentations, they are actually receiving anything from $10 to $15 to even $25,000. Many of them, and this is for one keynote, and many of them say they've never been to a speech coach. And it's very important, however you learn, that you always step back and look at your presentation with fresh eyes. And you don't necessarily have to go to the best speech coach in the entire world if you're a novice, but I do recommend that you need to at least have a mastermind group or a group focused and have some way that you can learn from people who are more seasoned than you are. So let's roll up our sleeves and look at, how do you, wherever you are, get to the next level? So one, understand that if you get paid for your advice, you get paid for what you know. You get paid well when you deliver it well. So you have to have something to say. It's amazing how many people come to me, to NSA, and to Lois, and when we say, well, what's your expertise? Oh, well, I'm a great speaker. Well, what is your subject matter? Oh, I can talk about anything. No, you can't. You look at, how do you make your living now, or how did you make your living, or what is your different point of view? Perhaps you were in sales in a company. What did you do that made you the star that other people can learn from? Because many professional speakers actually started training within their own companies or within their own industries. So first of all, you need to have some content to talk about. Then let's look at the number one way you take your content and make it valuable to an audience is you have to make an emotional connection. In other words, if you work on the principle that nobody cares about you as much as they care about themselves, you'll never go wrong. We have to look at our message from the point of view of the audience. Speak as an audience advocate. So for example, let's just say you talk about sales, leadership, customer service, whatever your subject is. They are universal subjects, which no matter what the fads are, they will always be popular. What you bring to the table is not a book report of other people's books. You bring your point of view, your experience, or perhaps you have interviewed great leaders and you wrote a book about it. So you have a slightly different point of view. And it's very difficult to create a masterpiece presentation. First, have one core presentation. If you go to Lois, if you come to me, if you go to any coach or start putting together your presentation, well, if you have 10 subjects you could talk about, even 5, pick one, the one you have the most authority, the one you're most passionate about, because you are going to be living with the speech. It's the same with writing a book. You're going to be living with this content for a long time. Make sure you're really interested. And you design that speech, and then how you personalize it is to look at different points of view. So it might be your subject from if it's sales, from a sales manager's standpoint, for perhaps technical sales professionals or sales professionals themselves or entrepreneurs who need to sell their business. So same core, what might change depending on the audience is different stories and examples. And of course, you don't have to be the expert in every industry. And if there is one way, when I was primarily a keynote speaker, which got me booked again and again and does help me sell sales training, is that I interview the individuals who are going to be in the audience and I look at my subject matter from their point of view. What are they now doing? Or what are their challenges that I can help solve? So it's a matter of developing your content for each audience, looking at the point of view. Make an emotional connection by making sure that their point of view, their interests, their challenges are within your message. The other way you make an emotional connection is by using you-focused language. And I recommend, whatever you're speaking, record yourself and listen. How often do you say, I am going to talk about, I am going to tell you what I would like to do first? No. Make it what you will learn, what we will discuss. How often in your experience have you found? So look at how often you can use you-focused language. If you can interview some of the individuals in the audience ahead of time and put their words in your presentation, they know you did your research. So that's developing your content, first of all, then making the emotional connection. Your content needs to be organized in a simple, logical structure, which is built around a big idea, a premise, a central theme, or a dominant thought. Now, you heard Lois's positioning statement. That is clear and precise. And this is exactly, you know who her target market is. In the premise or the dominant theme of your presentation, it needs to be that clear, because your whole speech is proving your premise. So for example, every year, and for 20 years, I have delivered a presentation for the American Payroll Association. One of the talks is how to sell yourself and your ideas to your senior management. So my premise very simply is every payroll manager can sell themselves and their ideas to the senior management. They would think, oh, I want to do that. How do I do that? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the simple structure that proves my premise. Now, often our premise is not actually selling the subject, it is selling the result. For example, I could say every payroll manager can get promoted. Oh, I want to do that. How do I do it? Well, you have to learn to sell yourself and your ideas to your senior management. This is how you do it. And Lois, this is especially important for our friends in health and wellness. You might be recommending nutrition. You might be recommending exercise or meditation. When budgets are cut, the chances are those really soft subjects will be eliminated. So in that case, your premise is you are helping the organizations increase their productivity and retention, which saves them money. We always have to find a way of how is our subject going to make or save our clients' money. So we have emotional connection. We have a simple structure that proves a good idea. You need to open an impact, close on a high. And you, of course, tell good stories, because we are speaking not only to our audience, to who's sitting in front of us, we're also speaking to please the client who booked us. And when we do our job well, we are speaking to the audience of our audience. In other words, we want our message to be able to be communicated to other people who will talk to our audience members. Now, of course, you heard a lot of my work is sales training. So you present to a prospect who is probably, especially if you're expensive, your offering is quite expensive, might be $250,000. They're not going to say, oh, yes, we'll write a check. They are, in fact, going to go to the investment committee. They're going to go to their management. They're going to go to other individuals and debate what they heard. And every presentation, probably, if you're talking to an audience that goes out, oh, what did the speaker say? He or she said bullet, 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 and told a great story about this, and recommended that if we want to increase sales, we need to do that. So that has to be crystal clear. And what I recommend you do, as you're reviewing your presentation, you say, now that you know the 5 ways to increase leadership, or now that you better understand how to position yourself ahead of your competition, when you go back to work, make sure you tell your team, or make sure you recommend to your management, bullet, bullet, bullet. You are, in fact, giving them the words that you want them to say about your presentation. You can also say, and if you have the challenge with this, why not tell them the story about Fred, who once he implemented these ideas, got him promoted. So you're reminding them of some of your key stories, and you're giving them the words. Now, here's one more, Lois, especially for people who are advanced, and they might say, I know all this, because as you know, whether it's your speaking or whether it's your marketing, when you are good, when you're already getting $25,000 for a speech and the audiences are rebooking, but you know you can get better, then it's a matter of you might have less work to do. However, simple techniques practiced consistently make a big impact. Because my goal, especially if you have a superb speaker who is busy, is to have people come up to them and say, Dawn, I always thought you were the best speaker I ever heard, but that was amazing. They don't know the difference. And here are some of the differences. One, and Lois, some of our CPAE friends, I said, okay, you've got your core message, have it transcribed. Now, not the edited video, that you put for your demo. I want a whole live speech transcribed. Every word that came out of your mouth, I want it. Don't type it yourself, have it transcribed. Because what a transcriptionist will do is they will type what they hear. And if you look at paragraphs without commas, you're saying you're not pausing enough because they heard there were no breaks. So one, you need to look at, are you speaking in shorter sentences or phrases? As my speech coach, the late Ron Arden said, Fripp, the written word is for the eye. The spoken word is for the rhythm. And at the beginning of your presentation, and if there's only one area you actually script, it has to be the opening. I suggest you write your notes down the page. I'll never forget the first time I met Larry Mariottini. It was 10:45 on a Tuesday in 1972. So you see, you write your script at the beginning to get it in the phrases. So if you're looking at a paragraph rather than sentences, chances are you need to, what I say, add verbal punctuation. Where should the commas be? The periods, the new paragraphs. Then you need to have different lengths of pauses. Then look at, get a yellow highlighter. Every time you say I, highlight it to see if there are ways you can start the sentence not being I, or you can make it more you focused. Find all the redundant words. And I'm finding a lot of rights, a lot of you knows, a lot of he actually did this. No, I'll give you one or two. But if I have one speaker, 15,000 works 80 times a year, one of the most popular speakers, he's brilliant, but he's minimizing it. But I say, no, he doesn't actually do it. He did it. He does it every day. So remove all those irritating words. And Lois, as Jerry Seinfeld said, he considers a good day's work if he can take an 8-word sentence and edit it down to 5. Because in his case, it's funnier. In our case, it's more memorable. So look at the quality of the words. And there's one question I ask nearly everybody. Specifically, what do you mean by thing? Do you mean a technique, a discipline, a habit, a strategy, a technique? What do you mean? And you are not aware of how many times you are not specific. You, in everyday conversation, you don't have time to think. There's not a preset. What is Patricia asking me? You say, oh, well, there are 3 things. But in a presentation, and I define a presentation, it might be a boardroom presentation, it might be a report to your boss, it might be talking to a client, or it might be addressing a convention with 1,500 people. It's all presentations. You think about it in advance and you look at the quality of your words. So that was a lot of information in a short period of time, which is why you get the replay. Paul, before we show people where they can actually learn how to be a better speaker, are there any questions that were posed?
Well, there was a comment earlier that said, it came from Ken, and he said that when Lois came to Salt Lake City and spoke at their Mountain West Speakers Association chapter, she brought up a point that was so pertinent to emerging speakers that it helped him immensely. She warned them that their content should never brand them as generalists, and he thought that that would be worth mentioning.
And that is absolutely true, which is why my message is always reinforced. And I've spoken at your chapter multiple times. You might not have been there, but I've done it at least 6 times over the last few years. Lois and I are 2 of the individuals who really do believe in giving back to NSA chapters and help people. But certainly that is why what it is you get paid for what you know. So, Paul, if you are interested in improving your presentation skills, and then we'll get to how do you market it. But the best, easiest, convenient, cost-effective way to improve your presentation skills is Fripp Virtual Training, frippvt.com, which is my highly interactive, learn at your own pace, web-based presentation skills training that's highly interactive. So Paul, if you show everyone where they would like to go for their free trial, you can get a chapter on openings, on stories, and on sales, no cost, our gift to you. You can just go to the website Paul will be bringing up any moment and sign up for your free trial. And then Lois will tell us some of the other mistakes. Here we are. There we are. So there's Patricia Fripp. All speaking is public speaking. Good. So Paul, let's take them to the training center and give them a sample of, for example, how about speech structure?
Certainly, I'll bring that up now.
This is the best of what I've learned in 35 years.
Welcome to the skeleton under the flesh of your words. In this course, you will learn how to save time while learning a foolproof way to organize any presentation. If you're ready, click the Start Training button.
Well, we've got more professional speakers.
Remember that there are 3 ingredients in every presentation. They are the content, the structure, and then the delivery. The more you work on clarifying your content, organizing your structure, then adding some initial scripting, the easier it will be for you to have professional sounding delivery. You wouldn't build a home without a blueprint. You would not drive to another city without a map or good instructions. This is the same with your speech structure.
All right, so as you can see, this is Fripp as your own personal speech coach, 24/7. You'll never disturb me. And you know, Lois, we have been collaborating for a few years, at least with Fripp VT. I'm never going to age. So we encourage everyone to go take your free trial. You go to Fripp VT and just join. If you would like a personal demo, if you have a team, we are very happy. Paul and I will do a personal demonstration, although it is very easy to navigate. So that is some basic idea on presentation skills, where you can get more in a very convenient, cost-effective way. And then, of course, we have a community and all the live webinars that I do as with Lois. We afterwards, we take the MP4s and we actually put it into Fripp VT Training Center. So you would never, ever, 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 ever run out of content. Never. Not possible. We can create content faster than you can consume it. So with that, Lois, now that your clients and speakers in general are getting better, they're focusing on their presentation skills. So what is the next mistake you see most commonly made?
Well, if I can just say one thing too about Fripp VT, I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and I've told you this before in our target market in the speaking business, is that you are too expensive. I'm not going to call her, she's too expensive, I can't afford her. And I think one of the things that creating your virtual training has done is make this affordable for people all at any level in their speaking practice. So I applaud you for doing this, because it really does allow people to work with you, directly with you, in a way that can be more economical for them at the point where they are.
And that is certainly true, Lois, whether you can afford a coach or not. Even if you work with another person, another coach, it still prepares you. Even a lot of my corporate clients and entrepreneurs, they will go through a lot of it first, because this is a way to get the information and improve the presentation before we work one-on-one, which of course is a more expensive option. Yes. So for example, for anyone on the call now, we're happy to give you a coupon code Fripp, save you 20%. A year's access would be less than 1 hour of speech coaching. So with that, so thank you, Lois. Now, so once they improve their presentations, then what do you want them to do?
Well, I think that there are ways you can make this business a little bit easier and less of an uphill battle. No doubt that this is a tough business.
Yeah.
You have to have absolutely great presentation skills, as Patricia has modeled and not only talked about. But if you want to be invited back, you have to have some great marketing skills if you want to leverage. And Patricia, we did a teleseminar a long time ago, and you said, Lois, what's the biggest mistake speakers make? And I said, Patricia, sit back, relax. I'm going to talk for 15 minutes on this. And mercifully, I won't today. But to me, one of the biggest mistakes that speakers make is they do not leverage. And let me talk about what I mean by leveraging, because I think that this is really a very important thing and a newer thing that I've been talking about lately. Target marketing is extremely important because it gives you a point of reference. It gives you a way to attack the marketplace. Inevitably, when I go to a chapter or a national meeting, I have someone come up to me and say, Lois, I have developed this great new service program I'm really excited about. And I will say, where do you think that would make sense? And they will say, well, anyone who wants to establish a great culture of service will love it. And my reply is always, well, let's go call everybody and see if they're interested. Doesn't work. So targeting can be incredibly important. And when I say target, let me tell you exactly what I mean. I mean looking to industries like financial services, healthcare, agriculture, food service, retail, manufacturing, that kind of thing. And when you do that, when you target market, you actually create more momentum for your next booking with each booking you do within that target market. And I would ask you, just believe me on this. It works. It works. My clients will tell you that it works. So incredibly important to target. I think that when you have a good target market, a great resource for you to find out exactly who you should be talking to is LinkedIn. And I think not enough people are using it. And let me say this. I was talking to, yesterday, one of Fripp's colleagues, CPAE, very successful speaker. And I said this sentence, and there was silence at the end of the phone. I said, do you realize that the term meeting planner is merely a metaphor for decision maker? That rarely will you be hired by a meeting planner in corporate. In association, meeting planners are important because they may influence a decision, but rarely are they the sole decision maker. So I think that that's something that and I'll tell you, telling on myself, it was a few years before I realized that. It was 3 years working with the St. Louis MPI group. They had me kick off their year, every year free for 3 years, never got any business. Oh, they loved me. We want you to keep coming back. And finally, I beat this sucker to a timely death. And I haven't returned because I realized I'm not going to get any bookings off of it. So I'm going to move on to more fertile ground. Let me tell you about LinkedIn. Give you just a quick example. If, let's say, you work in the financial services arena, you could go into the LinkedIn search engine and put financial service plus corporation. And then I like to work regionally. I think it's a way to make the information manageable. So financial services plus corporation plus northeast, whatever you want to put. Then you will get a list. Is everybody on that list a prospect? Absolutely not. Then I'm going to click on advanced search. And in that little area, I am going to put VP sales. And I'm going to click again. And then I have a list of VP of sales within the financial service organizations that came up on my first take. Why am I telling you to do the search for the VP of sales? Because that's your most likely decision maker. And it's whether you speak on sales, service, stress, change, the VP of sales. And I think that this shows us that the people who dictate how much money will be spent on a meeting comes from sales, which is not surprising, but that the decision often goes back to the people who are making the budget. And that's the VP of sales. And NSA did a membership survey a number of years ago, and actually the survey came back 80% VP of sales, 20% VP of marketing. So those are your most likely suspects, and I want you to know that going in. So you don't want to ask for the meeting planner in corporation. In an association, the meeting planner is not exactly a decision maker, but is a conduit to get your information through to the people, probably a committee, who will be making a decision. So you want to work on those relationships as best you can. But that's why I say LinkedIn is a great way to go. Now, then when you have this name, LinkedIn has their own email program lying within the platform called InMail.
Yes.
Send an InMail. And on the InMail, you do not want to be long. You know, Patricia, I am always preaching, use an economy of words at all times to speakers. Use an economy of words. And when you're sending an InMail to somebody you don't know, if you can't wrangle out some kind of a connection with somebody to bring you into him, you want to just introduce yourself by saying, my name is Lois Creamer, and I work with organizations in financial services just like yours who want to yada, yada, yada. I would love to have a 10-minute conversation to see if I may be able to make a difference at one of your meetings. Can we do that? And then send it away. Now, when that InMail comes in, it will never go to a junk file in LinkedIn, which is one of the reasons that I like it. That person has to delete it, which he may. So give it a couple of tries. If you don't get the answer you want, move on to the VP of marketing. But those are a couple of ways to, I think, get in. And one of the things I was wanting to mention too, I told you about leveraging. Patricia, I mentioned this to you specifically. And I've developed something that I call aftercare. Accountability is something that is really becoming more and more desirous of the people who hire us, which is a good thing. And when I used to do sales programs for sales teams and corporations, I looked at, and don't tell anybody this, but I looked at that presentation as a showcase. I went up there and I gave the best ideas I had, techniques, tactics. Then I left. Then I called the person who hired me. And you know what I said? I loved presenting at your group. They all seemed so engaged. At this point, do you think it would make sense for me to work with your sales managers to make sure they're going to implement and apply the actions and techniques that I talked about? Because if you do, we can make that happen in a number of ways, through a webinar, through a small group meeting, through a recorded meeting on Zoom with sales management, maybe consulting with one person, maybe small team consulting with sales. And there were times I made more money on the back end than I did for the presentation. You must be able to have, I think, a menu of ways that you can help people. I think that this online learning is absolutely You've got to be thinking about it. We've got to be thinking about doing other things besides just speaking. You can no longer make a good living by just speaking.
Now, if I can interject, Lois,
Please.
because it reinforces the Fripp VT and it reinforces what you do going back, holding people accountable. Because the dirty little secret, and this is well researched from the training business, which we have made our living in very well for decades, is one, the dirty little secret is when you have an audience who is genuinely interested in your subject and a really great presenter, which Lois and I like to think we are, with great information that is valuable. 2 weeks later, they've forgotten 70% of what they heard.
Yeah, sadly, that is true.
And now, hopefully, the 30% they remember makes a difference. But the reason that what you did worked so well is they got excited about the ideas. You need to have me work with the leadership to implement it.
Yes.
Or with Fripp VT. Yeah, we got people very excited. But unless you really remind them of what they learned, yeah, it's not gonna maximize the investment they made in the first place.
And you just said it well. You need to remind them of what they just learned. And you know, this business is all about having a certain amount of intellectual property and then repeating it and having it resurface in other vehicles. Yes. So how many vehicles can I drive my intellectual property to the market? I do it through speaking, consulting, writing, products, small group Zoom meetings. Used to say Google, but Google's not doing their thing right now. But it's Skype and Skype. There are a number of ways. And what makes this a valuable idea to the client is you're not talking about coming back in and taking everybody out of their desk and putting them in front of you for a period of time. You're talking about coming in virtually at a time that is appropriate, and anybody who should be in the meeting who can't, record it.
And I'm glad you mentioned Zoom, Lois, because this is magical. Because one, even busy people in Silicon Valley, now that's an hour down the road, but getting an hour, 2 hours of people's time with a Zoom meeting, it's Skype if Steven Spielberg invented it. So I use Zoom for most of my coaching sessions, especially tomorrow I'm going to Southern California to work with the team. They're raising money, but 5 of their leaders will be presenting. Some of them are techie types, young, brilliant, but they're not very articulate. So I work with them all once or twice in advance in Zoom. We record it, send it back to them to study, to work. So a lot of the work is done before we get in person. Yeah. Or you say, nobody has to fly. You can give advice and coach with nobody leaving, which is a lot less expensive and less wear and tear on the body. So this is brilliant. And I love how you told us about the how you use InMail in LinkedIn. That was brilliant. Now, Paul, I know there are lots of comments. Are there some specific questions and what we need to address?
Yes, actually, Barry asked, how effective is reaching out to human resources to address issues in the workplace?
To address issues in the workplace, they would probably be great. To sell a speech, not so much. Let me say this. HR, of course, it would be great to hear about workplace issues. The reason I say not to book a speech, HR is used to hiring these kinds of seminar companies where they charge $100, $200 per head. It is training. It is out of the box. It is not customized in any way. And so the money that they spend on bringing people in from the outside has absolutely nothing to do with what we're selling. And your responsibility is to make them see that if that ever comes up. You have to make them see that. So I think, though HR would be a great place to get information, just remember the place you want to sell that is somebody on the executive team, VP of sales, VP of marketing.
All right, and then we have Karen said, Lois, I'd love to hear an example of what you would say in that 10-minute phone call with the VP of sales.
Well, I bet you would.
And for a small Zoom meeting, I tell you. Yeah.
Well, I would always open up with my positioning statement. I'll tell you, I'll just say it just a few ideas based upon what I used to say for my sales programs that I'm really not promoting anymore. But I would say, this is Lois Creamer. I appreciate taking a few minutes of your time today to ascertain fit. I work with organizations like yours who want to fast forward their selling skills. And I'm wondering if you have any meetings coming up, or you think it's time to have a meeting to upgrade the skills of your sales team. And I have some information I'd love to send you. But tell me, do you ever bring in outside experts to work with your sales team? And then I would start qualifying. I happen to like Lois Creamer's 10 questions to book more business to qualify, because if you use those, you're actually able to quantify interest. Are you going to work with them now? Somewhere down the road, you'd be a good fit, or this isn't ever going to be a fit. And it enables you, my system enables you to spend the most time with the people who are most likely to buy. That's the key. To me, productivity in doing your outbound marketing is the absolute key. We only have a finite amount of time to do it. So we want to be really, really good and practiced at what we're saying.
Now, are you going to tell them your questions, or is there a small charge for that?
Well, actually, Paul is going to offer them something that I wrote, and those questions just happen to be in that bonus that I'm going to give out. So read those, and those are really the questions that you're going to be able to ascertain fit. Your challenge is to get to the right person.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, though, never go in asking for a meeting planner. Never go in asking for HR if you're looking for a speech. Always go in asking for VP of sales or marketing. And then if they send you somewhere else, you're most likely to be in the exact right space. And in fact, 2 of those questions, Fripp, I ask you and then I re-ask you again. Is there anyone besides you who is in on this decision? Because I want to speak to everybody who has anything to do with deciding who they're going to bring in to do the work.
Good. And I know I'm helping someone who's giving a presentation, and she said, oh, well, I'm really only speaking to one person. And then it turned out, well, no, she's actually speaking to 8 people. But what is important, look, there's nobody in a boardroom, or there's no one on the committee. They might not have the ability to say yes. But if you don't include them, in her case, in the eye contact, they can certainly sabotage the decision.
Absolutely right.
You do need to, that's very good. Brilliant.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Now, Paul, are there more questions?
Well, I do have one more, and this might be a little too multifaceted, but from Janice, how do you decide what to charge for the back-end consulting and Zoom meetings?
There's a good question. I'll tell you, I have talked with some people who I think have been doing this and talking to them about what they've been getting and how they got to what they've been getting. There should not be a huge disparate difference between working with you live and working with you virtually. You have to remember, what is the product? The product is your intellectual property. The way it's being delivered shouldn't make that big of a difference. However, if you're doing, for example, a webinar, already they're not paying expenses, right? So you're going to want to remind them of that. I think sometimes using the idea of a percentage of your live fee, and say for a webinar, I charge 75% of my regular fee schedule. You should also be prepared to have a consulting hourly fee. I always suggest to those who want to do that, never work with anybody for 1 hour. Always have a minimum to begin a relationship. That's where you'll make a difference, and they'll be back if you do that. And a small group fee, but it always should be a little percentage lower. But do not make this as cheap as a seminar company, for example. It should not. And your job is to sell your intellectual property, the value of it, regardless of the vehicle used to deliver it.
Yes, exactly. And I know, because what I do is I do a lot of my work in Zoom before I get to the company to train. The idea is, with a webinar, I'm going to introduce all the speaking principles. With the Zoom coaching, I'm coaching the important individuals. Because when we get together in person, then they're on their feet faster. If I get there and have to teach them how to improve their presentations, there isn't time enough to change. So certainly,
great idea.
So the fee is, so if you think I spend a day in Zoom and a day in person,
yes,
then
yes.
The fee will be a little bit less than if it was 2 days live.
Okay.
But it's so much more advantageous to the client, because, for those of us who have sat in all day or 2 day or 3 day seminars, it's exciting, it's brilliant, but you're so exhausted and overwhelmed. Yeah. Often you have a better impact on the client when you help them in digestible chunks.
I totally agree. And everybody, listen to how Patricia did this. She really is offering a package. Pre-work, her live program, and then possibly some post-work. And if you can use words like aftercare, after work, accountability, I think these are money words. And I think that what you will find is that you will have a great conversation, and people will start taking you up on this, and you will start making, I want you to have a revenue stream that still comes in without you leaving your home. Now, you can speak as many times as you want, but also I think it's more fun to really go into an organization in depth, get to know them, get to know their culture, their people. Do you think they're going to be calling anyone else for advice but you? No. You're going to be considered the resource.
Now, Paul, there was one other poll question. I don't know if you brought it up. And this is my fault. Did they need more help with speaking, marketing, or both? Did you ask them that? It's a bit late now, but it might be a matter of interest.
Well, it's posted now, and then if there's a big need for something that we didn't cover, we can always follow up in an email afterwards.
Exactly. And as you can tell, Lois and I, with our experience, are never, ever, ever going to run out of what we can do. So we make a commitment to you. If you were kind enough and interested enough to sign up, we will do this. What, every 6 months or something, Lois?
I'd love to. I think it's a great idea. It's fun.
Yeah. Now, Paul, are there any other questions? I know there's a lot of chat. So what is the general chatting or questions that we should be aware of?
A lot of the chat is then communicating with each other. But for you, Lois, what is your, in regards to time, what is your minimum to start that relationship?
I have, my bread and butter are 2-day programs, one-on-one. But I do work hourly for people who want to work on their business a piece at a time. But my hourly, you have to commit to 2 hours. That's all, really, 2 hours. They don't even have to be used at the same time. And then after the initial 2 hours, you can book an hour at a time. But we just don't accomplish, I barely get to know you. You don't get to know me in an hour. And so that 2 hour minimum, I will tell you, my clients are very happy about that 2 hour minimum, even the ones who at first balked at it. So 2 hours is my minimum engagement.
All right. And from Joseph, he offers college financial planning. Who do you think that he should contact because the VP of sales doesn't seem to be quite the right fit?
Boy, that's a good question. I would go to the dean of the business school and ask that same question.
All right. And then, how did you get your very first speaking engagement?
Now, is that to me or Lois or both? So why don't we both answer it?
Sounds
Well, if going back to the very beginning, I had my own business. I was a successful entrepreneur in the hairstyling world. I was one of the first women to be an in-demand men's hairstylist when that was a new industry. I, of course, am dating myself. And because I was traveling nationwide for a hair product company, giving seminars for hairstylists, and I'd been through Toastmasters, I was the star of my Dale Carnegie class, and because of my personality, I was doing quite well, and my executive clientele, and this is a key point in getting your first bookings, my executive clientele, you talk to your hairstylist what you're doing, many of them were saying, oh, well, if you're speaking, come speak to my Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, Breakfast Club. Hey, would you want to speak at my, at one of my team meetings? And because they liked my personality, I was good at what I did. They thought I would be pretty good, and I exceeded their expectations. So then my clients, and where do you get your first bookings from? The people who know and love you and support you in what you're now doing. Don't think I'm starting a new business. These contacts don't work. People you are now doing business with, and this is what I learned from my very first boss, people do business with people they know. People do business who do business with them. People do business with people their friends talk about. And people do business with people they read about. And that was advice that I received and gave before the internet, before we had YouTube, LinkedIn,
Yes.
Websites, free webinars, which of course, Lois and I are here to serve you. We hope you understand our advice is given to you lovingly, and if you want to improve your presentation skills, Fripp VT will help. If you want to improve your marketing, have a couple hours with Lois. We are both giving you resources to reinforce what you've learned free of charge. And it's just, you will never go wrong being generous with your information. There's some very seasoned consultants and coaches that said, tell people what they need to do for free. Charge them to actually, how do you do it? Well, Lois and I are both giving you advice because we believe if you want the help we give, when it's time for you, you'll give us a call.
Exactly.
And that has served us well, which is why we speak at so many Toastmaster conferences, NSA chapters,
Right.
etc.
Right.
So, Paul, any other questions or comments that we need to hear about?
Well, let's see here.
Oh, Lois, do you want to tell them how you got your first?
Oh,
yes.
Well, actually, someone who you know, Patricia, who was a big mentor of mine was Ray Pelletier.
Yes.
And shortly after I went out on my own, Ray called me up and he said, I've been asked to put together a weekend in Tempe, concentrating on marketing, 75 people max, and I want you to come and talk about marketing. And I kept hemming and hawing, and he said, you're going to do this. You might say no, but you're going to do this. And, and he said, I'm going to walk around with my arm around you, telling people how great you are. It was wonderful. It turned out to be a great thing for me because I walked out with 6 two-day trainings out of 75 people and 3 chapter invites.
Yeah.
And for what I do, it was a huge payoff. And Patricia, when those 6 two-day programs were over, I called Ray and I said, well, what are you going to do for me next? He was wonderful to me. He was wonderful to me.
Exactly. And so Lois and I, because obviously we did not get established and successful in our businesses without the help from others, which is why we do our very best to give back to others. So Paul, before we start summing things up, anything else we need to answer or hear from?
Well, if you can quickly touch on this, that's fine, or you can discuss it in the LinkedIn group later. Someone asked about how can they solidify or protect their intellectual property in regards to motivational speaking.
Well, that probably is a conversation, Lois, with someone like Francine Ward, who is a lawyer, a copyright lawyer, who gives a lot of seminars and information at NSA. I don't know if you have any comments.
Or Russ Riddle, who is from NSA, North Texas. He's an intellectual property lawyer. But let me just say this real quickly. If you go out thinking you can protect everything that you say, you can't.
Yeah.
So if you're uncomfortable with that, you shouldn't be in this line of work, because you have to give away intellectual property in order to gain interest. Now, I'm not talking about somebody stealing all of your stuff and going off, but I'm just saying you have to be comfortable with a certain amount of people who might hear it and other people might think that they're hearing it for the first time, and they aren't.
Yeah. And of course, the idea is when you are speaking, I'm not saying you're not going to say, have you ever read Brian Tracy's book on such and such? In chapter 2, he tells a great story about such and such. And this reminded me of how I got this. So, but you give full credit,
yes.
And 98% of your content has to be yours.
Yes.
Remember, it is not a book report of a book you didn't write. Yes. And
that's right.
You know, how about quoting yourself? So, for example, I often say, as the great philosopher Patricia Fripp said, you know, and then, so, you know, and have a little fun with it. So with that, Lois, so of course, if people want to contact you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, probably email Lois at bookmorebusiness.com. Visit my website. You can click on a button and connect with me through there. You can sign up for my blog through there, which I'd encourage you to do if you haven't. But I am always happy to take a question, shoot me an email. If there's something that I can do, I would be happy to do it.
Good. And certainly I recommend you all go to frippvt.com, click on a free trial. If you're part of a team and want a personal demo, we're certainly happy to do that. And if you want to go to my website, fripp.com, Fripp, you can certainly connect me from the top right, but also click on events. We actually have 2 other events today, one for Fripp VT users, one for anyone. We did market these to different groups, but I'm interviewing Don Yeager, who actually spoke at NSA. He's a longtime coaching client, very much in demand speaker,
yes.
9 times New York Times best-selling author. And again, with all these webinars, once you register, you get the replay link and any handouts associated, whether the time is convenient or not. Because as we have, of course, people who are interested all over the world, we can never pick a time that's going to work for every time zone. And we understand people have busy lives. So we encourage you to do that. So again, my blog, and what we do with a lot of these interviews is I embed them within my blog. So we have some of Lois's articles on the website. We embed this interview within that, and you have the replay. And please feel free to share the replay link. Feel feel free to share the resources we will send you within a couple of hours. So we thank you very much for your participation and your interest. And certainly, if you signed up for any of the Fripp Lois, the dynamic duo of speaking webinars, you will be invited to the others.
Yes.
So, again, Lois, it's always a pleasure. And do you have a walk-away line for our audience before my concluding line?
Boy, you like to live dangerously, don't you? Here is my quote for the day. Are you willing to risk a yes by making one more phone call to a prospect today?
Good.
Pretty deep.
Yes. And my advice is all learning requires repetition and reinforcement.
Yes.
That's why you need Fripp VT. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you, Lois.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Patricia. See you soon.
Paul, if you can